Oh, I've got another job to do here. I've got a problem with a shower and I want to isolate it and the switch doesn't work. It doesn't depress anymore, so it's obviously gone a bit funny inside because it won't actually switch off. So I've had to buy a new switch. I've got to swap them over. And then after that I've got a challenge with a shower. I've bought a new shower which I hope will directly replace this shower in here, which unfortunately has got a bit old. You can see maybe, I don't know if you can actually, but it's very yellow. The cover, it's gone a bit odd. At the top there I've got a couple of screw holes where the surrounding plastic is broken, and one underneath as well. The case is cracked in a couple of places. I'm not very happy with this unit. To me it's reached the end of its life. It works perfectly well as far as I'm aware, but the casing is now probably a little bit on the dangerous side because it's not necessarily watertight. I've done a little bit of sealing around here just to fill the cracks up, and yeah, I'm not entirely happy with it. The cover at the top here is basically missing. It's been broken off, so the unit is not what I would call serviceable. So I've got that switch off, and there are two different colours being used for the live and the neutral. So I've opened up the shower and I've determined that the brown and the blue go to the shower and the red and the black come from the consumer unit. So on my switch I need to connect the red and the black to the feed terminals, and the blue and the brown to the load terminals, and then that job is done. Obviously connecting up the earth or the CPC wires. Yeah, that's tightened up. That was very straightforward, but the difficulty is of course these wires are so thick because they've got to take about 37 amps, so they're nice thick wires, which means they're very difficult to bend, and I've now got to get that box back flush against the wall and connect it. So that's the next challenge, is to actually get those wires back into the box. There we go. Works better. This old switch I determined it would switch if you grab the cover with both hands and push with two thumbs, but just with one it's absolutely impossible. So yeah, it's basically had it. That's got to be chucked in the bin. Right, next challenge, get this shower unpacked and see how it looks compared to the existing one, which I'm not going to undo yet because I'm rather terrified of working on it, frankly, because it's the water issue, getting a good leak-free joint. Right, so I've got the new shower out and it's looking promising. I have to say I'm a bit wary, I'm a bit apprehensive about refitting this, just because I've got to undo a water joint and then do it up again, possibly with very restricted access. But these units look incredibly similar, don't they? This one in my hand, the new one, is designed to be a replacement for virtually any existing shower. So it's got multiple entry points and pathways for pipes. So if your water comes in the top right hand corner, you can pipe around the outside to connect it to the red stoppered pipe, which is the feed into the unit. And this old unit has got a feed in exactly the same position to the left side. So I'm sort of hoping that I can basically disconnect the unit and leave the actual metal feed pipe in place. Just bear with me a moment. So what I'm hoping is that the black plastic pipe from here, which is hidden by this cover, is and connected to this metal pipe, I'm hoping that I can leave that in place, and I won't have to disturb the joint that's partially hidden by the tiles, because that looks like a very awkward space to work in. And I'm going to have to take all the sealant out. I'm going to have to make space. I'm going to be working against an electric wire, so I'm not keen on that at all. Yeah, so I've got to get that cover off next and see how that joint is fitted, and maybe look at the spare parts, the fitting parts in this new shower, to see if I can work out how that's fitted as well. So I thought this little screw here and the one underneath it were a hex fitting, but they're not. They're like a star. I'm not sure what the technical term is for that, but they're star shaped. Luckily, I have a comprehensive toolkit. No, I can't say that. I've had a comprehensive toolkit, and in it are some bits that are perfect. So let's see what I can do. Well, I got that off quite easily, and it literally pulled off. Well, I'll show you the fitting. I can't believe it was watertight, to be honest with you, because it wasn't pushed into that hole at all. It was actually held watertight by this rubber ring here. So, and it was a little bit loose. It just literally came off so easily. As I say, I'm very surprised that was kept watertight all these years. So now I can see inside that hole that this pipe that comes out is coming from underneath. It's got an elbow, and then it comes out here, and there's a compression joint here which is holding on this, which I believe is the old style filter, and I think to clean it you would take this off, but I doubt that it's ever been done. Anyway, the last few years I've had a water softener here, so there's no sign of lime scale in here, and the shower itself will probably be very clean inside. Now the question is, how big is that? I'll bet you it's no good for me to stick another piece in there and join it. And indeed, how would I make it watertight? No, this filter's got to come off, so I've got to get hold of this compression joint, take the filter off, and take it from there. Now, I have to say, the gods are smiling on me today, because that was very easy to get off. I thought I'd really struggle with that joint, seeing as it's been on there for decades and decades, but actually it broke the seal very easily. And yeah, so that valve filter thing is now off, and all I've got to do is determine if there's enough room to get a push fitting on there, or whether I've got to use that compression joint again. Okay. Cut that off. Let's have a look at the pipe. The pipe doesn't look too deformed, and there's a good length of pipe before the actual place where the olive was. So I reckon that's suitable for a push fitting. I have actually managed to score that pipe actually, which is not good. Yeah, I've managed to go through the olive a little bit too far, unfortunately. Well, we'll see what happens. Oh dear, my luck has run out. So, because I scored the pipe, I put the push fitting onto it, and I basically capped it off with a stop end, and then I went and turned the water on to see if it leaked. And by the time I got back upstairs, I could hear a hissing of air coming out of the pipes, and then I saw a couple of drips come out. So, and you can see from the darkness on the pipe, that is where the rubber insert that's in there has gone onto the pipe, and it's right smack in the middle of that cut. So that cut is letting the water out, unfortunately. Oh, so now I've got to think a bit here. At least I know how deep the pipe goes. Excuse me. So I've got a choice. I can either try and do a compression joint on that exact same spot and put lots of plumber's mate in there so that it's pressed into that hole, that slit, that cut, and that would probably work because it would be under pressure, and I'll put lots of gunge in there all the way around, front and back, sideways, top and bottom. Or what I could do, because I now know the depth of that rubber, if I can get that cut inside of where that rubber is, so between the rubber and the end of the fitting, because that rubber is what seals it. If I can get that cut inside that space there, then effectively it won't have any effect on the seal. And the way to do that would be to shorten this pipe a bit. So when I press the fitting on, the fitting will go further into the hole, which I think is quite possible. This was up to, well, it went up to there. It went up to where that ring is. And there's room for it to go, well, I don't know if there is actually, is there? No, that won't work, will it? Because that'll be tight against the wall. Yeah. I think I'm going to have to go for a compression fitting. If I cut that pipe too short, then it'll make my job very much harder all the way around anyway. So it's back to the shop to get a compression elbow and some plumber's mate. I do have to laugh about myself, really. I use every tool on every job. I just keep going to my toolbox and getting tools out. I mean, this is just taking a shower unit off and putting it back on with a replacement very similar. And look at all the blooming tools everywhere. All over the bed there. Well, I've got some putty. I've got myself a compression joint. I've got some putty. And so now I'm going to do this joint, and I think it will be very successful. Okay, I've reached the stage where I'm drilling holes now. I've found the position by just connecting this up directly and then holding it and then marking. Unfortunately, the side of this exit hole is going to be exposed, so that's going to need to be filled with silicone sealant again. And these two holes at the top will be exposed, but I don't have any choice. It's just how it's worked out. So I'll take the plugs out and fill them up with grout, make them watertight. Ideally, this hole here with the surfaces coming out should have been a lot higher, so it's not underneath the shower head. But it is what it is. I can't change that now without major alterations to the bathroom, so it's not worth doing. Little tip here for when you're drilling into tiles. This hole here has been drilled quite close to the edge, so there's a big danger of it splitting. And I've got one here as well marked, which again is quite close to the edge, although a little bit further away. But any holes in the middle of the tile, what I do is mark them with a pencil, and then I use a drill bit which has got a sharp point, and I just tap it very gently to basically create a small hole in the tile, just getting the surface off. So when you start drilling, the drill's got something to grip on. If you don't do that, it will slide sideways and will scratch your tile. Some people use masking tape or electrical tape to give them grip, and they put that where they want to drill and then they mark over the top. But I don't find that very successful because the tape doesn't really give you a lot of grip and it tends to come off very, very easily. But just very, very gently. If you hit too hard, you'll split the tile. But if you're gentle tap, 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 then you will create a tiny little hole where you've broken the surface. And that's what gives you grip. And then the next tip is when you're drilling, keep the hammer action off because that will vibrate the tile and split it, most likely, especially near an edge. And just go very slowly. Try and get the speed of your drill to be very slow so that the bit is just very gently eating away at the tile, and that will stop it splitting as well. If you go and press too hard, the likelihood is you'll split the tile. So you want to be slow, pressing firmly but not really, really hard, and just take your time. Right, I've got the hole at the top drilled now and plugged. And I'm going to sort out these visible red plugs. I'll do the same with this one down here actually as well, just to make sure that the hole is filled and it's going to be watertight, because there's a good chance water can come down the back of the unit when it's being used. Now a little tip with this as well is don't try and pull the plugs out, particularly in a hollow wall like this where there's a gap between the plasterboard and the next wall in the other bathroom. In fact, get yourself an Allen key of a suitable size. That one's a little bit too big. So cut the face off with a Stanley knife, sharp knife. So that's got a face on it, you see. So that's actually overlapping the tile on the hole, so that won't move inwards. But if you cut that off, you're basically left with a hole with a bit of plug in it, and then what you can do is you can just put your tool in like that, and give it a tap with a hammer, and it should disappear into the wall, and then you can fill. And if you're clever, you can tap it until it reaches, for example, the plasterboard behind the tile, and then you can fill up to where the plug is. So the plug's giving you some extra support for the filler to butt up against. Okay, then we're a bit further on. So I've done this joint up. I was very careful to do it quite gently because it's actually going onto a plastic pipe, and I don't want to just overdo it and then crack it, ruin the whole thing. With regard to doing these up, I've broken my golden rule of using washers to spread the load, but there's a very good reason for that, because they wouldn't really work, because the hole itself is shaped to accept a screw head. So the washer wouldn't actually do anything there at all. In fact, there's no room for a washer to sit. So what I've done with those, there's 3 of them, is I've been very gentle to tighten them up. I literally have used no effort at all, and as soon as the screw stops turning with my very little effort, I've stopped, and it's quite firm, so I've not over tightened it, and that plastic is not under stress, so hopefully that won't split before the actual unit goes wrong. So next job is to get the wiring in. Now I haven't pressure tested this joint because I couldn't really, because I would have had to have attached a pipe by compression with a stop end on it, and then I would have lost the olive. And although I've got spare olives, I prefer to use the olive that comes with the unit itself, with the joint itself, because it's obviously compatible with the size in terms of its width and also its pliability. So I'd rather not use another olive. Anyway, I'm relying on the fact that I got this right first time. So when I turn the water on, I will leave the cover off and I'll leave this exposed and see if it drips, and then I'll leave it for a few hours to see if it starts to drip, because it can take upwards of 24 hours for a joint to start to drip as the pressure gradually works its way through any very small pinhole pricks. So we'll see what happens with that, but the first thing to do is to get the wiring in, I think. Although, no, actually, I will go and turn the water on now, I think, because, yeah, as long as this is actually turned off, the water should just go into the unit, and that's the end of the matter. It's under pressure then. Right, the moment of truth has passed. The water is connected. And my finger is bone dry. Bone dry on the joint that I'm worried about, and on the second joint that I had to do, it's dry as well. So it looks like I've got away with that one, folks. When I bought this joint, I noticed that the olive was actually wider than the old olive. And so not only have I got some plumber's mate in there, but the olive's probably covering that cut completely anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that with the cover off for 24 hours, just to make sure there's no little pinpricks of water finding their way through. I've done the wiring, that was simple enough. The wires that I've got are a little bit long because they were fixed in a different position in the old unit, but I don't want to cut them and have them the exact size, because you never know if you want to change the unit again. It's always better to have plenty of wire to be able to reach things that are in slightly different positions. And indeed they're folded over like that very neatly, and should any water splash behind the cover here, then the water will tend to run down and run off the bottom of the wires. It's not going to find its way into the sheathing quite so readily, because that's now up high and close to the actual shower unit itself. So I'm going to leave that now. I'm not going to put up a new rail because there's nothing wrong with the old rail. The old shower head can stay as well until it breaks. They're both Mari units, so it shouldn't be a problem. And I'll keep the rail and the new shower head and hose as spares.